My name is Jess Wilson. I'm the National Director of Good Things Foundation, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this webinar today. We are going to start right on 2 o'clock because we have a lot to talk about and a lot of people joining us. So it's wonderful to have so many familiar names. I can't say faces because I can't see you today. All joining us from all over the country, from our network partners to our policy partners, a range of different people who are all here to hear a bit more about the Be Connected evaluation. So I would like to, before we start, just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'm coming to you from Gadigal country today, which is a beautiful part of our country, and I would like to encourage you to also just recognise the country from which you're coming today as well, in the chat panel. So if you haven't already, please do so. That would be fantastic. Now, I know the star of the show today is Associate Professor Anthony McCosker, and it is brilliant to have Anthony with us to talk all about the Be Connected evaluation. But before we do that, I just thought I'd give you a little bit of an overview of some of the things that the Be Connected program is about, and a little bit about Good Things Foundation as well before we do that. So I'm going to share my screen with you. For some of you, this will be all old news, so please bear with me while we do this, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm on present. Can everybody see that? Can I have a yes, I can see that in the chat panel, or a yes, Steve Dixon can see. We've got lots of raised hands. That's brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. So just a bit of an outline of today's webinar. So we're going to do a little bit of an overview of Be Connected program. We're going to talk about the Be Connected evaluation key findings, and that's when Anthony is going to be doing all of the talking. But I know that so many of you here today are from the Be Connected network, are delivering this program on the ground. And so it is really, really important that we have questions from you. This is a celebration of the work that you have been doing over the last 3 years. And so we're really, really keen for you to have the opportunity to ask some questions about some more of the details that Anthony talks to you about. So if you have questions, we're going to ask you this time to put it in the Q&A button. If you can see the Q&A button down the bottom of the webinar, it just helps us to manage the questions that come through. I know usually on our webinars we do them in the chat panel, but please, if you have specific questions, please put them in the Q&A section. That would be fantastic. If you do want to chat to each other, though, please also feel free to use the chat panel. If you want to make a comment, or you want to talk to somebody else that you've seen that's joined the webinar, please do so in the chat panel. That's absolutely fantastic. Okay. Just one last reminder is that the webinar is being recorded today, and that's so that other people that couldn't come at this time. I know that we always try to make our webinars at a time that's suitable for a lot of different people, but clearly not everybody is able to make it today. So it is being recorded so others can see it at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to talk to you a bit about Good Things Foundation. So for those of you who don't know who we are, we're an organisation, a social change organisation who's focused on improving people's lives through digital. Our vision is a world where everyone benefits from digital. And in Australia, we deliver the Be Connected program. For those of you who don't know, we deliver Get Online Week, and I think we have announced the dates for Get Online Week this year, and it's the 18th to the 24th of October. So we're looking forward to another successful Get Online Week this year. And we also deliver a digital health literacy program called Health My Way. We absolutely believe in the power of technology, and we believe in the power of community organisations to make a real difference in people's lives. And so our role in Be Connected and many other our programs is to build capacity in community organisations, make sure that you've got some funding to be able to do these programs, and deliver them in a way that suits your community. And we do this because there are 2.5 million people in our country who are still not online. And I know Anthony will talk a bit more about the older Australians and the reasons why Be Connected was developed in this way. But we do know that older Australians, particularly those over 65, are more likely to be digitally excluded. But they're not the only ones. People with disabilities, people on low income, people with low employment are also more likely to be digitally excluded. And although this is our 2020 version of Digital Nation, there is a new one coming. So it just wasn't quite ready for this webinar today. So look out for that in the next month or so. But the Be Connected program, as just an overarching piece, is an Australian government funded program. It's been running since 2017, October 2017. It was a Turnbull government election promise in 2016. And it is a partnership. It is a true partnership in delivery between the Department of Social Services, the eSafety Commission, and ourselves at Good Things Foundation. And there are kind of three key parts to that. The first, which many of you will know so much about, is the Be Connected network. And that's a network of community organisations who are all over our country. We have built the network to over 3,500 community organisations. So for those of you who are part of the network, you are part of something really big. It's not just you delivering programs to people in your community, but you're part of a much bigger movement of people who are trying to improve digital inclusion in our country. We also, as many of you know, run the small grants program that's part of Be Connected as well. And to date, we've dispersed over $18 million worth of funding since 2017. And that's a range of different grants. And if you have not got a grant, I would be, Bridget, our head of network, would be really unhappy with me if I did not encourage you to join the network and look at how you might get some funding from us to deliver a digital literacy program in your community. But some of the big parts of this program is actually what you do on the ground. And we have over 14,000 now digital mentors who have been trained to support people in their local communities. We develop skill sharing opportunities for community organisations, and particularly last year in COVID. And this is something that the evaluation doesn't cover because it finished before COVID, but the opportunity to bring people together to think about how they were going to deliver digital skills digitally was a big challenge for the network. So the opportunity to bring people together was really, really important. So that's something that's key to what we do. We also have a helpline for learner referrals, and we do a lot of marketing and awareness raising campaigns as well. But also our fabulous colleagues at eSafety have developed some amazing online learning resources that really support you to do what you do in the community. As you know, it's at beconnected.esafety.gov.au, as you can see down there. And there are 26 topics, 121 courses, and now 430 activities that can be completed on this. It's really fantastic content. And we put on here some of the favourites, which is particularly Squirrel Bank, which has been launched in the last 12 months, and it is a brilliant course on how to do online banking. eSafety also does fantastic online safety presentations as well, and I know a lot of people in the network join those webinars with other people in their community during the year. So a bit of a plug for those as well. I just wanted to say that actually all of the photos that I've got in my presentation are real people in the network. So this is Trish Pye from the tech exec down in Narooma. And our other ones are actually mostly from our organisations in Queensland. So shout out to all of our people in Queensland who, particularly in South East Queensland at the moment, who are currently in lockdown. So look after yourselves, and we recognise the importance of digital inclusion more so when we are locked down and not able to connect with others in our usual ways. But the evaluation to us has been so important because it's the first large-scale social impact evaluation of a digital inclusion program in our community in Australia. So that is really, really important. It's a key piece of research to support digital inclusion in Australia. It highlights how all the program elements come together. As you saw, there's a number of different elements that come together to deliver this program. And so that's what's really important about this evaluation to us, is looking at how do they work together to deliver a program. It provides us areas of improvement, so definitely places where we can, opportunities for doing some things differently or to improve, so that we make sure we're getting the best impact we can. And it helps us to highlight the importance and effectiveness of programs like Be Connected in addressing digital exclusion in Australia. So we are so thrilled. We have been waiting for this evaluation to be released for quite some time, haven't we, Anthony? And so it's just been so exciting for us at Good Things, at eSafety, at DSS, to finally be able to share the evaluation, and for Anthony as well to finally be able to talk about this amazing piece of work that he's done. So it is without further ado that I would like to introduce you to Anthony McCosker, Associate Professor Anthony McCosker, who is the Deputy Director of Social Innovation at the Research Institute of Swinburne University. So Anthony has been doing research on digital inclusion and digital exclusion around social media, around data and privacy, and particularly on impacts of health and well-being for people in the last number of years. Anthony, it has been an absolute pleasure to work with you on this project, and looking forward to doing some more work with you on another one that we've just been meeting about this morning around low-income families. So Anthony, I'm going to hand straight over to you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and allow you to talk all about the Be Connected evaluation.
Thank you, Jess. I'll just get my screen going. Okay, thanks very much, Jess. It's really great to have this opportunity to talk through the findings of our evaluation. And I'll probably, miss huge chunks of it because it was a very big evaluation. But I'm looking forward to having a discussion around our findings and some of the key things that might be meaningful to everyone who's come along today. So I'd first like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, which is where I am at the moment, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I'd also like to acknowledge the work of our whole research team, the members of the research team at Swinburne. We had two project managers, Roxolana Suhaverska and Julie Tucker, Christine Critchley, Jared Walsh, Kiros Hirui, Gordana Bruce and Michelle Lim were also part of this work, and it was very much a team effort. Now I'm just going to go back to the beginning. So I'll start with, I'll just jump right into the challenge that we faced and give you a bit of context around the evaluation project. Just to emphasize that the evaluation work was between October 2017, when the project launched, to February 2020. And in some ways, I was desperate for the evaluation to keep on going because I really wanted to understand what happened around COVID lockdowns. But we had to draw the line somewhere and produce some findings. So look, we know the big picture issues. Older adults in Australia, older Australians are the least digitally included, according to the Australian Digital Inclusion Index. Only 55% of Australians aged 65 and over regularly access the internet, and that's ABS statistics. And we kind of, those statistics are bandied about, and we know that there are a lot of people not online, but we don't really know much beyond that. There's a lot of variation and difference and diversity, and it's really understanding that diversity that I'm most interested in. And in particular, there's an increasing need to understand the impact of what we call digital by default society. So where services are going online, and that's access to financial services and goods and buying and selling, social activities, entertainment, and many other aspects of everyday life. And in many cases, we're looking at a digital first situation and even a digital only situation. So all of those who aren't accessing the internet through any sort of device are at a huge disadvantage in that scenario. Now, the impact evaluation, as Jess mentioned, was funded by the Department of Social Services, and it's not, I have to emphasize, it's not common for such a thorough evaluation to be conducted on national programs. And for us, this was an amazing opportunity to find out more about digital literacy and digital inclusion later in life, as well as inform the program and inform its future iterations, which is what we were tasked to do. There were some key questions to us and to me, and those were around what it takes to improve digital skills and literacy and participation. And I know this is what we're all struggling with and working towards, but it's really not an easy thing, and there are a lot of challenges and a lot of roadblocks in the way. And also understanding what this actually means. What are digital skills? What is digital literacy and participation? How does it affect our quality of life, our well-being, etc.? The other questions that are important are around who benefits from the program and in what ways. What's the variation that we could find that help us to understand beyond those top level statistics. And also, we were really interested in how the Be Connected network contributes, because it's an amazing model to put in place. There was a lot of brain power behind it and a lot of planning, and getting it up and running and getting it going was a huge achievement. So I just want to emphasize as well, I'll explain what we did in our evaluation, but I want to emphasize that some of our findings might not look exactly like what you see and experience on the ground. We're using accepted methodologies, reliable and robust measures, I guess, to help provide a picture to government to help them make decisions about the issues and about the resources needed for digital inclusion. So we had to do this in a systematic and thorough way. And our approach was, first of all, around surveying network partners and talking to network partners to provide a post-implementation review. And I would have surveyed and spoken to many of you who've come along today. So thank you. We drew insights overall from around 915 program participants. So this included surveys with 626 learners and 337 who did a follow-up survey, so that we could really understand the impact and the difference that the program makes in people's lives. We also spoke to as many people as we could to get a really good nuanced picture of what was going on behind those survey measures. So we spoke to 30 learners from different walks of life and from all over the country. We spoke to 12 mentors, and we did paired interviews, and you might have had some of our team popping up in your centre and chatting with either a network partner manager or mentor and learner at the same time. We also conducted what's called a social return on investment, which really tries to understand the value of the program in financial terms, and I'll come back to that. So we found out a lot about why older adults are striving to build digital skills and do more with digital technology in the internet. Some of the barriers and drivers that we saw, and top level findings right from the start, we found that older adults do find difficulties learning from family members and friends. There's often a reliance on family members and friends. And early in the program design, I think there was a sense that family members could be the digital mentors in their older adults' lives and contribute in that sense. And we really learned early on that wasn't the best approach. We also found that low digital confidence, fear of security failures, these kind of issues around security and safety really inhibit a lot of learners from getting started and then from gaining independence in terms of their digital technology use. Social connection we saw as a key driver. So this is something that came up over and over again, that participants in the program were there because they wanted to connect with family and friends. They were isolated in different ways, and this was an opportunity to use those tools to help make those connections. As was also important, connecting to services and banking. And we shouldn't forget the importance of entertainment as a driver as well. This is something that is sometimes downplayed, but we need to understand and see, the importance of entertainment, YouTube, streaming videos, all of that kind of thing in older adults' lives and in their quality of life. Probably the key driver and challenge for us was this issue of keeping up with change after so many years away from the workforce. And because we were working with 50-plus-year-olds, that was a really varied experience. We had people in their 50s and 60s looking for work or in precarious work. And we had those who were moving further and further away into retirement. And there were huge issues around that issue of keeping up with technological change that was really important. Okay, I'm just going to jump into key findings and then run through some really quick top level stuff. So in terms of meeting the targets in engaging and supporting learners across the country, absolutely the program exceeded expectations. The target was around 100,000 per year. We were well over 500,000 when we finished our evaluation, and it's up around 800,000 now. So, that's a really good sign that the reach is there, the accessibility is there, and there's a whole lot of implications towards around that. We focused on a number of things, and particularly around digital skills, digital confidence, and social connection, with also a focus on safety and the importance of safety. Now, what I can say is that we saw statistically significant change across the board, but with a stronger change in some than others around most of the key, what we call operational skills, and some of the strategic skills. So if we think of operational skills as just those essential elements of using computers, getting started with computers, using a browser, using a tablet or a smartphone, and using apps and so on, all of those essential skills that are needed to just get to first base. And that includes things like email and so on, which is really important in most people's lives. Strategic skills we'd think of more around information navigation, creative skills, and content development skills, and all of those kind of things, and social and communication skills. And it's really important to us to understand these things differently and not lump digital skills into one bucket that we don't differentiate, because there's a lot of variation. And what we found was that the greatest change happened in those operational skills. We also saw significant confidence change right across all of the areas of digital technology use that we looked at. So in particular, use of smartphones and tablets, email, search engines, and also in terms of safety and online safety. Those were the areas that we saw really strong improvement. We also saw increased social connectedness and reduction in loneliness. And this was, we approached this by measuring loneliness at the 2 points and using a validated scale to really understand properly whether there was a change in people's sense of loneliness. And we did see that there was a significant reduction in loneliness that we followed through in terms of our interviews and discussions with learners to understand the context of and the importance of social connectedness and how that changed with the program. A huge amount of that change, I think we can associate with participation at local venues and through network partner organizations, and just the fact of being with others once, twice a week, sometimes more, made a really big impact. So we also tried to focus on the bigger picture questions, and this is a really difficult one, whether we can see some sort of impact in terms of social and economic outcomes of a program like this. And I just have to emphasize that it's really difficult to show that change, particularly in a small amount of time. We were really looking at that change over 4 or 5 months, and we didn't really expect to see major social and economic outcomes. But I just wanted to give you a sense of what we mean by this and what we'd be looking at. Those areas of participation that we're interested in are around social participation with personal and formal networks, economic participation in terms of online buying and selling, personal participation in terms of health, as Jess mentioned, the importance of health for older Australians, and leisure and games, and cultural belonging and participation as well, we saw as important. And in that list, we saw that a kind of descending percentage of participation across each of those items. So more people were involved in using digital technologies in terms of social networks, and that was usually about email and connecting in some way with family and friends. Some were involved with economic participation and less with personal and cultural participation. And we did see some significant change in the use of online leisure, video and games, and a lot of really good stories about the importance of YouTube for learning, for understanding, for the how-tos, for the tutorials, for a whole heap of really important aspects of what digital technology can be for and can do. So one of the things that is important to all of this, and to the program and to the outcomes of the programs, is this idea of improving digital confidence. And I wanted to just emphasize a couple of things about this and just show you some data here that we and some of the findings from our surveying. So we found that there's a great deal of variation across age groups. And this was really our starting point for thinking about, okay, what can we see are the differences in the way that older people engage in the internet, and what's happening in their life that affects these questions of confidence. Now, if we kind of grouped a whole range of questions around confidence together, but broke down the results or the answers to those questions about how confident people felt with digital technologies into these age brackets. And what I wanted to emphasize here is that we see some interesting things like the 50 to 59-year-olds, having 22% of them in the no confidence bracket and 30% in the some confidence bracket was a real eye-opener for us. And it just breaks down those stereotypes, those myths that age is directly related to or correlated with digital technology and internet use that you might feel is the case when you see the ABS statistics. We also had 22% of 80 plus year olds in that high confidence bracket, accomplished digital technology users, and I want to speak a little bit more about them in a bit. So the key finding for me, or our real light bulb moment, came when we tried to understand, who the program worked for and in what ways. And we found that through some nifty statistical analysis that we could clearly see three categories of participants that we called them emerging, accomplished, and evolving learners. But these are just labels that we're giving them, and hopefully that doesn't color too much what these groups represent. But what I want to emphasize here is that we had the emerging group might correspond to what we think of as those who are most disconnected. So those who come to the program with really low initial engagement in digital technologies. And with this group, we saw the greatest change. So where I said that, with skills, confidence, loneliness, etc., there was significant change. This group had change in almost all areas of their digital technology use. It was about a third of the participants that we surveyed. Interestingly, they tended to complete less online modules. They weren't at the stage of actually using the online tools in the way that others might be, and they were more likely to engage with the program in different ways through workshops, through engaging with digital mentors and so on. They were more likely to be women, they were more likely to be older, they were more likely to have lower English reading skills, and to us that was a proxy for a migrant background or a non-English speaking background. And importantly as well, they were far more likely to come from a non-professional work background. And so we saw this pattern repeating in different ways, or varying in across the group. We had accomplished learners who were highly engaged from the beginning. They completed modules, they used all of the tools. They were more likely to be men. They were more likely to be younger, have high English reading skills, and have a professional work background where they had that kind of exposure right through their life. And we had some participants who spoke to us about, yes, being there right at the start with the earliest computers, playing around with very early coding languages, and really sticking with it all through their lives, but still wanting to participate because they believed in keeping up, in finding out what the next thing was, and learning right throughout their life. Now, we had a really interesting think about this evolving group, where we saw a more moderate initial engagement, and we saw targeted change. We saw that they tended to choose the kind of things that they wanted to get out of the program, and walked away from other elements. They were more likely to be women but younger, and have high English reading skills, but also non-professional work background. And when we spoke to people in this kind of category, we realized that this was really about those who were moving further and further away from their work environment, where they might have had lots of digital access. You would call them, digitally engaged older Australians, but they had increasing high anxiety about the pace of change and about adapting and being able to keep up with digital technologies. Okay, so just a couple of quick additional last things. The network itself, we've kind of said that that what is successful about the network model is the dispersed network partner arrangement. The fact that pretty much anywhere in the country you can find access to services, to someone who can help, a digital mentor at a library, someone at a men's shed, someone at a cultural centre, or a neighbourhood house, or and many other category of network partner. And I think that diversity is what is really new and interesting. And when we look at what's happening elsewhere in the world, and when we talk about this with our colleagues overseas, they're really interested in the way that we're looking at dispersing digital skills and digital inclusion right through the economy and through the society. We found that like it's reflected in the fact that 72% only had to travel less than 15 minutes to access a network partner, and many, nearly half were visiting at least once a week. And that's a huge sign of success. And when we spoke to participants, a key theme that kept coming up was initially not knowing where to start or who to turn to develop digital skills. And one of the accessibility solved that problem for many participants. I also want to mention that, but I don't have any more detail on this, that digital mentors are a standout program element. As we know, many are voluntary and included in their own way in terms of training and support through the network, but they offer and bring to the model a huge amount of value that we captured in our return on investment analysis. So just some overall takeaways, and I'll just come back to this return on investment. We saw that roughly $4 was created in social value for every dollar invested, and that the program itself has created an additional 229 million or 0.5 million in social value between the launch and between the end of our study. And what this means is that we tried to monetize those areas of success in the program, which is around increased skills and knowledge, increased confidence in the use of digital technologies, increased connectedness, and increased online safety. And each of those things carry a huge financial element to them. So we know for example, the cost of fraud in Australia, we can actually, pinpoint that and calculate it, and we can convert that into a dollar value in terms of the social value that the program produced. So program features enhanced digital participation with clear social economic outcomes and are helping learners to get online. That's our bottom line. That's the outcome of our evaluation. We emphasize the local individualized support and mentoring, which builds trust, particularly through the work of digital mentors. We saw that individual needs and interests shape effective skills learning. So that's one of the key outcomes of thinking about skills differently and thinking about the confidence elements and the things that drive people to be part of the program. We also emphasised that online safety is a key to unlocking skills development and confidence and participation. It seems that the success is in some ways bound to this idea of putting online safety first for older participants in particular, to address those confidence and anxiety issues around breaking the machine or addressing those questions around fraud. We also saw that operational skills provide those kind of foundations, but I think we really need to take that further and take that into the strategic skills, to think about, specifically how we can help older adult learners to do more with digital technologies. And in terms of the learning resources and activities, they work well when they do cater to all levels of ability. And I know that that's a little bit contentious in terms of the targeting of the program, but in the sense that we found those three categories of learners all interested in and really focused on maintaining their skills, I think that that's a really important finding as well. I'll leave it there and we can have more discussion and answer some questions.
Thanks, Anthony, fantastic. So fabulous to have that overall presentation. There's been a few comments in the chat panel about some of the great things that people are acknowledging just about that. You're surprised about the age groups, and some really positive comments around loneliness and the impacts that it's had on loneliness. So I think that's great. We have had quite a few questions, and we had a couple of questions coming before the webinar, and we've had a couple come in now. So I might just kick off with one of them. There's two questions that are very reasonably similar, and they are around that social return on investment and how you monetize that social value of the program. One in particular, and this is from Cecily. Hello, Cecily, if you're out there. Cecily Michaels from LEAP, one of our very, very, very first network partners and part of Be Connected, and before that. So the cost of recruiting and supporting digital mentors is one of the key parts of this program, and one of the things that makes it really work. How did you go about kind of costing that? And was that included in the social return on investment costing?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think I can give you the detail that you're probably after there, Cecily, but what I can say is that we considered the cost of digital mentors in a couple of ways. One was thinking about, and there's lots of economic analysis around the value of volunteers in Australia, and we do have, economic costing of what that saves in different sectors and different industries. So we can use some of that costing, and I can send you the figures that we can use around that. And we also thought about the cost of training and paying individuals in that space, and then the proportion of digital mentors who, are being paid as digital mentors and those who are volunteering. So we took all of that into account, added some, subtracted others to the calculations. And look, it's not an exact science. It's a way of, we actually probably underestimate in a lot of ways the value that's created, mainly because we really want to be certain about things that we do put a dollar value to.
Fantastic, thanks. Thanks, Anthony. This is probably a comment, a question around, what this means for the broader possibilities of the program. So clearly, this is a question, it's a combination of questions, one from Meredith from ACAN and one from Joe Kavanagh, about, that this actually is showing some effectiveness of this program and positive social impact. And so what do you think are the key elements of this program that would enable it to be expanded to other groups? So for Meredith, she's interested in looking at expanding this to people with disabilities, but there are other groups of people that really need digital inclusion support. And so what do you feel from this research are some of those elements that are really important?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, and some areas, some other groups that we can address are probably easier to integrate into existing services than others. Particularly around employment services, and a lot of the organisations that are part of the network are actually working with younger individuals around unemployment, sometimes around domestic violence and abuse and those issues. And I think there are ways that I think there were sometimes frustrations that the program couldn't actually be extended to those individuals, but it would have been so easy to do, just literally inviting them along to the same kind of workshops and sessions and things. I think there's some important political, or let's say policy work, that we need to do around the importance of digital inclusion for disability and disability services. And my understanding is that it's not directly covered by NDIS, in the sense that that those broad goals around digital inclusion could. So that's something that we could work on, have more knowledge around, and think about ways of integrating into disability services, and
Yeah.
also probably community health services more generally, because we do know, and this is something that's really been accelerated over the last year, how difficult it's been to negotiate a lot of the community health processes, programs, services, given the sudden shift to online only, or during lockdown and so on. There's so much work to do there.
There's so much work to do, I agree. And I think certainly our Health My Way program that we did, which is separate to Be Connected, kind of builds on, has been that has had that focus around building people's digital health literacy. I think one of Meredith's additional questions to us as Good Things was also about, is this something that Good Things could do something about in terms of supporting people with disabilities? It's definitely an area that we are very interested in, and building some partnerships around looking at how we might do this really well. I also know that the e-Safety Commissioner is doing some research in this space as well. So there is some interest in looking at how we do that. And so if people are interested in looking at how to better support people with disabilities on digital inclusion, then please get in touch with us, because we are definitely keen to look at how we address that in the community. Yeah. So one of the other questions that we've had is around the statistics, around digital inclusion. And I know that you don't develop the Australian Digital Inclusion Index, but Steve Dixon in particular has had some questions around the use of the ADII and what that actually shows, and in particular looking at that figure of 2.5 million people and the continued use of that, and is that something that is really useful for us longer term. So I'm interested in your thoughts around the data and how that can influence what we do.
Yeah, look, I think data speaks to government, and government relies on standardized measures for things. And sometimes, or a lot of the time, they're less worried about, the precision in the sense of what's behind those statistics. They're more worried about the precision in terms of how we can measure change over time, and what's making a difference. So what is addressing and reducing those gaps that we know are there. And yes, say we use a blunt, sorry to Julian and the team to say blunt instrument like the Australian Digital Inclusion Index, which measures affordability, access and ability. And like any, all of those measures are aggregates of data that are collected in different ways, but across the population. So we're very confident about the way that data is collected. It is sometimes difficult to see, the nuance when it's reduced to a single index, a single figure. But what we can use that for is to show change over time. And what we can see is in those brackets of age, for example, in the 65 and above, 85 and above, and 45 to 65, there is change happening. And so we can at least chart that over time. I'd really like to see that continue, just so that we have some baseline, some indicator. And as for the millions who are not online, it's clearly a very complex set of issues and circumstances. But as you break that down, you lose some of the impact of that blunt fact, which I think that blunt fact of there are a lot of people, and we know them and we speak to them, who aren't online in any way whatsoever. And if we can keep that statistic for that purpose, I think it's useful.
I agree with you, Anthony. I think that is always the number one statistic to use when talking to people who want to make some decisions about funding. But it also kind of really does highlight that this is an issue for a lot of people in the community. That's 10% of our population. So actually being able to say that is really, really useful. One of the other questions, this is from Paula, is around that access to that support. And I know we talk often about how proud we are of the network, and how because of its geographic disbursement, as you say, because it is all over the country. But one of the things that she's asked is that, one of the positive items we've identified is that people didn't have to travel far. But what does that mean for people in rural and remote areas? So I'll let you comment on that from the research, and then maybe I can talk about that from a network perspective as well.
Yeah, we look, I think there's always information gaps around isolated rural and remote parts of Australia, and we're doing other work on that with other projects, particularly around health participation and how people in remote areas might access health services digitally or in other ways. And it is complicated. I think the relationship that people in remote areas have with digital connection is complicated, very important, and varied as well. We have some who are highly connected and some who are completely off-grid, and for all sorts of reasons. What we saw though was the mobilization of the issue of digital inclusion through country women's associations, through community groups, through a whole range of groups in remote, at least in regional and rural Australia. That's really positive and really, I think giving them access to the resources, making those grants available to at least develop, to put together some resources and to make those sort of services available is really a key start.
Yeah, I think that's right. And certainly from a network perspective, that was definitely our intention in building the network, and why we're so thrilled about it is that it has engaged some of those organisations that may not traditionally have delivered digital literacy programs. And ultimately it's about where people feel comfortable to go and learn, and in a place that's close to them. I mean, I would say, we haven't got this completely sorted. We certainly don't have a network partner in every single community in regional areas. I think one of the things though that we learnt, and that I've learnt from some of our network partners who work in remote communities is how, and through COVID and the experience of having to deliver digital skills programs digitally, which, I mean, shout out to everybody in our network who did that last year, because I know how hard and how much time that took. But actually, I think we've seen examples of how that can work well when there's, a person or somebody supportive close by doing some of that initial support online, on phone with people, to be able to get them ready so that they can then do that. So I think there's a lot of learnings we can take from what we had to do during COVID to be able to take into that rural and regional kind of delivery approach. So, Paula, that was a great question.
Yeah, and it also highlights the importance of digital mentors who, the more we have across the country in different contexts, I think they're really the glue that binds the whole process, because they're closer to the individuals in a whole heap of ways. And yeah, it's really important to have that intermediary work going on.
That's right. Yeah. And it takes time and effort, I think. And one of the questions, and this is probably a question for me, really, and this is from Tony, and it's about the grants program. So the question is around, when will the grants requirements recognise the benefit of working further towards those emerging participants that you talked about, that, it takes a lot of time to do that work. And so much of the time that, one of the the KPIs for the grants is that the number of people rather than the time. So I think, Tony, just in terms of answering that question for you, it is something we're very aware of, and it is a question that comes up for us all the time about the grants program, and we are working towards that because we know that Be Connected has been extended for another 3 years, and so that's starting in July to the end of June 2024. So that's definitely something that we're working on at the moment to see if there's a way we can make that grant program recognise the work that goes into supporting people who take a bit more time in that as well. Anthony, I can't believe we are very, very close to the end of our time together already. There's a lot of questions still coming in and comments going on in the chat panel, and probably not something we're going to get to all of. I'm terribly sorry. If we haven't answered your questions and you would like to get an answer to that question, please give us a call. I've just noticed that Cass has put our number in the chat panel there. So for anybody that hasn't had their questions answered, please, we're really keen to continue this conversation with you. So please give us a call at Good Things Foundation or send us an email at connect@goodthingsfoundation.org.au. And if there's something that we can pass on to Anthony, we'll certainly do that as well. Anthony, just the last kind of question for us to have a bit of a conversation about is, what does this mean for the future of, this evaluation's really important research for digital inclusion in Australia? What does this mean for research on digital inclusion going forward and for program development, do you think?
Look, yeah, I have lots of thoughts on this. I think, first of all, we have to expand, as you probably would agree, the scope to really understand the problem as it runs right through the population and crosses a whole heap of demographic and socioeconomic and cultural intersecting issues. So I think that's a key thing to me. I think, sorry to be political on this, but I think the investment is a drop in the ocean in terms of what it needs to be. And I think that's partly because we don't, as a nation, really understand very well the connection between digital inclusion and social inclusion, that these are entwined. And I think there's been a bit more of an understanding of that in relation to, what happened with lockdowns, with families who just didn't have the infrastructure, the ability to keep their kids online, to connect with their elderly parents, and to maintain those kind of lines of social interaction, but also economic participation around all of that as well. Did you have thoughts on where?
Yeah, look, I think it is, as you say, it's a drop in the ocean investment, I think, about addressing the issue. I certainly think, and we have advocated the whole time for the expansion of Be Connected to other target groups as well. So I think it's definitely, this evaluation is really brilliant in showing the impact that this kind of program can have in delivered, that where it has that combination of fantastic localized support at a national level, with really great online learning support for those people, alongside lots of capacity building and grants. So I think that piece around the grants and the continuation of that is really, really important to the delivery of these programs. So it's something we're advocating for, and certainly, as we know, the digital transformation journey is only going to extend since COVID. So the essential need to make sure everybody is online so we can build back better after COVID is definitely something that we are advocating for significantly. So look, we're at 258 people, and I know that there's a few people saying that they have to go already. It has been really brilliant to have the opportunity to be able to speak to you and to hear from you today. I'd just like to also say a last thank you to all of the network partners who have joined this webinar today. This is absolutely a celebration of the work that you do on the ground with people every day. We know that digital mentors love what they do. They get a real buzz out of seeing people learn something new. And that is really incredibly wonderful, but it also takes time and effort. And so just a big thank you to everybody for all of the work that you do on the ground. And another acknowledgement to our colleagues at eSafety and DSS. It's definitely been a partnership in delivering of this program. So thanks to everybody. Thanks again, Anthony, for joining us today. And look after yourselves, everybody. Have a very safe Easter break. And we look forward to continuing this work over the next 3.5 years. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.